This story begins at night. A man drives down a dark road. It may be unfamiliar to him, and he may not be sure where he's going. After a while, he feels a little lost. Suddenly, up ahead, a figure looms in his headlights. He slows down and sees that it's a young girl hitchhiking. It's strange that she'd be out here in the middle of nowhere. He stops to ask if everything is okay. She asks for a ride home. He says that's fine and tells her to hop in. As they head down the road, he notices that she looks pale. The air around her feels cold, and she's strangely quiet. Finally, the driver asks where she's going.
So, where are you heading to?
She gives him directions to her home. She says she hasn't been there in a long time. The driver thinks she's a runaway, and that he's doing a good deed by giving her a lift. They pull up to her parents' house in a typical neighborhood, and she climbs out. But as the driver is about to take off, he notices that the strange girl has left her scarf on the passenger seat. Looking around, he's surprised to discover she's gone. Weird. He didn't see her go inside. So with the scarf in hand, he heads for the house to return it. He knocks on the door and is met by a normal-looking gentleman. The driver explains about giving the daughter a ride and how she left her scarf in the car. Suddenly, the man's wife reacts with shock.
Where she went, she just kind of disappeared.
The driver wonders what's wrong.
That scarf belonged to our daughter.
The husband brings him inside and explains that his daughter died in a car crash 5 years ago, on the same dark road where she was picked up. She was buried with the scarf. Our driver's young passenger was a ghost. This classic tale is one of the oldest urban legends. Versions of it go back to the New Testament. In Acts 8:26, an Ethiopian traveling in his chariot is met by the Apostle Philip, who baptizes him and then vanishes. Similar stories about Pele, Hawaii's volcano goddess, have been told since the days of the horse-drawn carriage. Tradition says she first came to Hawaii in search of a fiery home. To this day, she's said to appear along Hawaiian roads, often as an old woman asking for a ride.
The Vanishing Hitchhiker is closer to a traditional ghost story. What makes the Vanishing Hitchhiker a modern story is the automobile. But in fact, the idea of roadside ghosts hitching rides is a very old idea. The particular Vanishing Hitchhiker story does seem to have antecedents that go back several centuries that we can document. There are some stories that deal with people on horseback who are accosted by a ghost who leap up behind them, and they have to get rid of them. But some of the elements of the Vanishing Hitchhiker are not there, such as it's very clear in these stories that this is a ghost or some kind of supernatural entity, whereas in the Vanishing Hitchhiker, that's only revealed at the end. We don't know what this hitchhiker is until the person discovers that the hitchhiker's been dead for several years.
What's tantalizing about the Vanishing Hitchhiker story is that it involves a trace of physical evidence, the scarf, a compelling touch that gives the story a jolt of realism. The tale is told in many forms, and each involves a bit of so-called evidence unique to that telling. Such evidence does seem to be a requirement for a ghost story to reach the level of an urban legend. Stories like the tragedy of the Texas ghost children. According to the tale, many years ago, on a gloomy afternoon in Austin, a school bus full of children stalled out as it tried to cross the tracks of the Southern Pacific Railroad. As fate would have it, a train came roaring down the track at just that moment, dooming the young occupants.
Hi. story goes that ever since the freight train school bus accident, the spirits of the children who were killed have clung to this particular spot. And if a car parks some distance away and the gears are put into neutral, and even though it's a slight uphill road, the car will suddenly start moving as if unseen little hands are pushing it along to be sure it will go over the tracks safely and not stall on the tracks, as a school bus did that very tragic October afternoon.
And to this day, those who try this trick with talcum powder on their bumper discover what some say are fingerprints of the young children. Physical evidence to back up the legend, or so it's claimed. But stories like this, and the vanishing hitchhiker, are still tough to verify, even by professional ghost hunters.
In my experience as a researcher, I've never been able to connect to the actual person who's witnessed this kind of an experience, which is what makes it an urban legend. We can't seem to connect to the person who's had the real experience. We hear it secondhand from someone else.
If that's the case, then why do we let ghost stories scare us so much?
I think the major reason we're frightened of ghosts is a broader reason that we call the fear of the unknown. If we don't understand what a ghost is, we don't know what its capabilities are. What can it do to us? How do we defend ourselves? So I think we're frightened because of the unknown.
And I think the urban legends give people a way to practice handling these fears by telling a story that almost could have happened and gives us a chance to feel that little adrenaline rush of what would I do if this happened to me.
People have been talking about ghosts for thousands of years. These stories have appeared in all cultures since the beginning of time. One of the reasons, I suspect, is because it tells us a lot about who we are. If ghosts are real, what are the implications? Does it mean we survive death? This is certainly one of the most interesting questions mankind has ever faced.
Ghost stories are disturbing because they're about phantoms that invade our lives against our will. But there are other urban legends, equally disturbing, where the intruders are all too human. True or false? More babies are born during a full moon than during any other phase. The answer, when we return. Are more babies born during a full moon? No, this is false. According to a 10-year study, birth rates are the same during all phases of the moon.